and welcome back to the agenda, I hope. Today, we're honored to have the Honorable Jane Brady right here joining us. As a prominent figure in Delaware politics and a passionate advocate for education, she brings invaluable insights into the challenges and opportunities facing our schools today. With the upcoming election, we'll explore the critical role that education plays in our community and how we can work together to improve the educational landscape right here in Delaware. Please stay right there, stay in your seats as we dive into these important conversations about the future of our education within the state of Delaware and so many other things, including the Republican Party. That's right here on the agenda, Republican parties. Miss Jane Brady, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Cohen.
Hey, we are so excited. As you know, when the agenda has a repeat guest, that means we're doing something right. So thank you so much for coming back onto the agenda.
Absolutely.
We haven't seen you since the primary election. What are your thoughts right now? Let's get right into it, not waste any time. What are your thoughts right now in regards to the Republican landscape here in Delaware and where these candidates stand?
Well, it's pretty challenging still. I mean, the registration disparity is huge. There are many more Democrats registered than Republicans. And with what the state has been doing with their automated registration process is creating a whole body of unaffiliated voters. And we don't know where they stand. Neither the Democrats nor the Republicans know where they stand. Are they leaning left? Are they leaning right? Are they single issue voters? What's important to them? And so I think that the future holds an assessment of who those unaffiliateds are. Some of the campaigns have been trying to do that in their specific districts, and then sharing that with the statewide over this election. But there's a significant new development with this automated registration process that's occurring. And neither party can count on knowing how many of those unaffiliated voters are with them. And it's going to take extra work by each of the political parties to determine who's with them and who isn't, so they don't waste their dollars on a huge number of disinterested voters.
Yeah. So I have to bring it up. What do you think about Mike Ramon's chances in regards to becoming the next governor versus Matt Meyer?
I'm optimistic. I don't know. I know there's a disparity now. They did a push poll that was way disproportionate to what the difference really is. There's a gap there, but it's smaller than they're reporting on the Democrat side. And so Mike's been working hard. He's a great people person. He cares very much about his community. He's been a coach. He's got a lot of kids and families that he's helped over the years. If they all show up, and the Republicans go either early or on election day to the ballot, he has an opportunity there. I'm hoping he realizes it personally.
Yeah. So what is it, you know Delaware, you've run elections, you've been in elections, you've won some, you lost some. What is it that you think that Delawareans aren't getting or not hearing in their Republican candidates? Is it just muscle memory? Where I voted Democrat a million times before, but is there something in the message that they're just not getting?
The message is often misrepresented as cold and heartless, and that the Democrats care, and the Republicans think, if you want to put it that way. We're rational and they're emotional. Okay. But the truth is that part of it is generational. People, I had a friend that worked at the Housing Authority, and back when they gave out the vouchers, and she quit after a while, but when she saw people receiving their vouchers, the person handing it to them would say, "This is thanks to the Democrats. This is thanks to the Democrats," right? And so you come to associate just surviving with having to have a Democrat there. The truth is, no one's thriving under Democrat policies. They're barely surviving. My son's adopted. His mom was in foster care. Her whole family, big part of it, lives in subsidized housing and Section 8. And I have to help them every month practically because they can only survive. They can't thrive there. We need to have a system that encourages people to excel, encourages people to maximize what they have to offer because it gives them back the maximum return. And we're not instilling in people a sense of hope under the current policies, in my view. And so they're desperate to hold on to what they've got, and they know that they're going to get that with the Democrats, and they don't know what's going to come with the Republicans. My view is nobody in this city is better off than they were even 30 years ago, let alone 4.
Right, and I think it was Charlie Copeland came in with the actual numbers and explained that, it's been 20-some years before there's actually been, us doing better across all of the economic lines here in the state of Delaware. So you're right about that. But I have to step back a little bit and say, you know what, I know for a fact that Democrats are working diligently to try to figure out a better way to do it. They recognize the problems and the same problems that Republicans recognize. But I think that on both sides, we just haven't found the right fix yet.
So I think the fix is in creating strong individuals. It takes a community to raise a child, but it takes strong individuals to make a strong community. And a lot of what they get, the message today, is with regard to collectivism, not strong individuals, not merit, not excelling and doing everything you can to be the best you can. The whole equity thing is an equal outcome as opposed to your best outcome. And your best outcome might be better than somebody else's. Certainly there are people who have done better than me in life. But I've made a good life for myself because I always work to try and have my best outcome. We don't encourage that in a lot of what we're doing today. The message has been changed in order to accommodate, in my view, a government-run, government-subsidized society that doesn't reward excellence and work. And that is not Democrat, that is not Republican. That's big government versus the individual. I believe in strong individuals and that they will make strong communities.
And that's been well said throughout the Republican Party for years, right? Pull yourself by your own bootstraps. We'll give you a hand up, not a handout, that type of thing. And sometimes it's effective and sometimes it's not, because as you're talking about, when you're in a society or in an environment where that equity isn't there, it doesn't matter if I get a hand up or a handout, it's still not enough. And there will never be true equality in this country until we can deal with those issues. So I understand what you're doing, you're saying in regards to that. Let me talk about one other thing, and that's the Senate race that's going on right now between Lisa Blunt Rochester and Eric Hansen. Lisa Blunt Rochester is doing a tremendous job at not only raising money, but getting the message out there and getting the votes. What do you feel about Mr. Hansen's chance in regards to this race?
It's a tough race.
Yeah.
I mean, she has an insurmountable lead in terms of name recognition, fundraising.
She's done the work.
She's been smart. And she's been engaged. And she's got, she started out on her dad's shoulders, and God knows everyone loves him, right? And so she had a real benefit there, and she's just continued to build, I think, a base and be engaged with people in a way that made a difference for them. And so that's a tough legacy. Incumbency has so many advantages. Eric is working really, really hard. And he's working pretty smart. Whether he can cut into that advantage remains to be seen. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah, it is.
I have to be honest.
I like what you said about Lisa, that she is that candidate that has made a difference in so many lives here in Delaware. I think that she's going to be really tough to beat this time around. I really do. I've had Mr. Hansen on the show this week. I think he is a very knowledgeable person. But when it comes down to it right now, I want somebody who's been in Congress. I need somebody who understands things and can really get things going right away. And I don't know if a brand new candidate, just my opinion, this is Kerwin's opinion, is what we need at this time in our country.
Well, I like Lisa personally. I disagree with most of her votes in Congress. And she's great with people. And I've always had a great engagement with her, so that's good. But in terms of her votes on policy, I disagree with almost every one of them. And I think Eric would make a big difference in the way he would vote. But the national issue, almost seems to have taken a side track this year. Really, people are focused on the state issues, the local issues, so much more than I've seen in the past. You know, it used to be, no offense to Lisa, but we had giants, you know, Castle, Biden, Carper. We had giants in the political realm, and she's establishing her role as one, but she's not there yet. And so it took a lot of the mystery out of what was going to happen. And we didn't focus that much on where they voted, but they were strong presences in every election they participated in. And this year, it just seems to be not be so. It just seems to be less about the national issues, and when it comes to anything other than president.
Right.
And then
people are fighting what's in front of them, you know,
and that, more about the local stuff
and what's going on. And although they're saying we're not dealing with the national, but you know, I don't have enough money to make it to the end of the week. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to happen. That's a national issue. But there's so many other things that are happening right here in the state. And I have to say that's business development and economic development here in the state, which we've talked about several times on this show. The other part about that is having someone in Washington that knows how to solicit for our state, right, to bring it in. And a lot of people don't know that starts in our congressional delegation. It just doesn't start in the formerly the Department of Economic Development, what it is now, more of a consortium. But that's where it begins. When you're having these Amazons that are coming to our state, it is our senators, it is our legislation in Washington that's bringing a lot of this to the state.
That's true. I just think the focus this year is on the president's race, and not on Congress in Delaware at all. When I talk to people, they're not the races. Congress, U.S. House, and Senate are not the races people have in the forefront of their mind. It's president, governor, and their local state reps seem to be what people are focusing on. And it's interesting because it's kind of an almost invisible section of what's happening in the election this year. But the focus, you have such strong personalities at the presidential level. And we don't have, a Ted Cruz with multi-million dollars on the airways every day.
Right.
So it's not in the forefront of people's minds, I find. That's my experience.
Before we go down several roads, and every time I talk to you, there's so many roads that I can go down. Let's talk about the lieutenant governor's race. That's one race I didn't want to forget.
Yes.
I mean, it seems to be narrowing. I think that's
I think that's fair.
Fair to say. Miss Evans Gay and
Ruth Briggs King.
Ruth Briggs King, excuse me. All these names are running together now. Talk about what Ruth, I think, can bring and versus her candidate.
Well, Ruth has the experience of being in the legislature, knowing how things work in the state, knowing how to make things work. She's been stymied in a lot of what she tried to get done by not having the majority in either house, but she knows what needs to be done. She has a tremendous relationship with the Hispanic and Haitian communities, especially in Sussex County, but also up here. And she has a great relationship with many people in the African American community. Her colleagues in the House, the Democrat colleagues as well as Republican, have a great regard for her. They think very highly of her. She always does her homework. She's always prepared. And I think that's going to be a real race to watch. I really do. I think that Ruth has been in Newcastle County almost every day of every week for the last, 8 months, whatever. She's been up and down the state. She hasn't neglected her base, but she's reached out. And I think that's going to be a real race to watch. I'm real hopeful there.
Yeah. I like Evans Gay's chances as well. I mean, I love the fact that she too has worked in Delaware, sleeves rolled up, as a lawyer dealing with adoptions and foster care and all this other information that she deals with. But I think that's kind of what Delaware needs, really, is to see that sleeve rolled up out there in the community, getting it done.
And that's what Ruth has been doing for 16 years.
Right.
So I met, Kyle was a clerk in the Superior Court when I was a judge there. So I met her a long time ago. Good work ethic, no question about that. Again, I disagree with most of the policies, including, I'm a big, with a Better Delaware, I'm a big advocate for transparency in government. And I thought her law regarding Freedom of Information Act was just horrible and a step backwards on transparency. So I really disagreed with her on that issue.
Let's talk about something while we still have the time that you and I both agree on, even regardless of partisans, and that's education in the state of Delaware.
Yep.
You're doing a lot in regards to education right now. We on the agenda are trying to educate the folks here in Delaware, and it isn't hard to educate because people know that it's not going well, right?
But most of them think it's their kid. And what I'm trying to help people understand is that it's not their kid. It's not them as a parent, and it's really not even the teachers. Most of them have a really engaged interest in helping their kids succeed. It's the system.
The system is broken.
Is broken, and it oppresses everyone that's a part of it. It is bloated. It is ineffective. For every dollar that we spend, we're going down in performance. It's almost directly inverse. We need to change the system, disrupt the system. And so when I have a plan that's called Educate, Motivate, Activate. Educate is let people know there are 17 schools in our state with single-digit proficiencies, 11 of them in this city, most of them minority majority. We're selling those kids' futures down the drain, and we're not taking steps that will change that. Motivate. Give them the motivation that Virginia Walden Ford, a single mom in a drug-ridden, crime-infested neighborhood in Washington, D.C. had to get her child when he started middle school from having to choose between getting beaten up or being part of a gang. And she learned about school choice and single-handedly got Congress to pass a voucher program for the district. And every year since 2004, 2005, 1,900 kids go through that program with a great over 90% graduation rate. And then activate, demand better. Demand better from your elected officials. Say, you know what, this year I'm voting for my kids. Give me a choice so they have a chance. I'm a fan of school choice. I believe competition is what made me better. Certainly anyone who's ever run for public office knows that if you're constantly under attack and you're constantly having to evaluate not only what they're saying, but your own position and how you respond and what you think, you become a better individual. You become more sharpened with what you can do. We need to hold kids accountable for learning to read. There's a program in Mississippi. Now, that's one of the poorest and brownest states in the country. They were 49th and 50th for decades in education. They passed a law. You have to read at third grade level to go to fourth grade. They implemented it about 6 years ago, and they put it into full implementation recently where it's now we've tried and helped you along. Very few kids didn't make it. They have exceptions for kids who can't. But you know what? They moved up to 21st among all the states. You know why? Because in the first 3 grades, you learn to read. And in the 4 through 12, you read to learn. And if you can't read, you can't learn.
Judge, how is it, and this is going to sound horrible, and smack my fingers afterwards, how is it that Mississippi, who was at the bottom for so long and have so many things, they're still one of the poorest states in the union.
Yes, they are.
How did we, Delaware, with all that we have going for us, how are we getting beat by them? Like where did it go wrong?
It's not about the money. And what happened when they adopted that policy is that suddenly it wasn't like teaching kids to learn to read, teaching kids to read. We've been doing that for decades, right? Suddenly it was like getting that third grader to proficiency. Suddenly we had an individual education plan for every kid in the Mississippi schools. And everybody worked with that kid because if they didn't get that kid there, the kid was going to not go to fourth grade and they didn't want to fail the child. And so everybody focused on an objective. That objective has given freedom to learn to thousands and thousands of young children in Mississippi. Louisiana's adopted it. Other states are looking at it. We should be doing something like that. We just added $8 million to our education budget, which is already bloated, for literacy specialists.
We're outspending, I don't know how many other states.
We're in the top 6, I think, around the country.
And
but
still
we're in the
getting
bottom
the bottom
4 in performance.
Any other company, you would be fired. There would have been investigations. The Attorney General office would be like, what's going on? I mean, people have been in trouble for less.
But the difference is that in private business, the company would have failed.
Yes.
The education system would have failed. But what's happening when the government supports that education system is that our children are failing. And we can't accept that result any longer.
Are we going to revamp the Department of Education? Are you holding that to whichever Republican candidate that, I mean, you work closely in your party, is that part of the agenda moving forward?
Oh, believe me, I've talked their ears off about this issue. But I also talked to Matt Meyer, and I told him, you know, spending all this money, first of all, the report he relied on, the AIR report, in coming up with his plan, had recommended that if we just spend a little over $19,000 per student, we'll close that achievement gap. Well, we were already spending over $20,000 per student, according to the Department of Education's own website, and we haven't closed that achievement gap. More money is not the answer. It is structurally flawed. It is not producing a result, which should be learning. The kids are not learning, and we need to structurally change the system. We need to disrupt it. I call on every parent out there of every kid in the public school system to demand better, to disrupt your system, to stand in front of your school board. My son goes to Cape, one of the best schools. But I stood in front of my school board and said, we have a 47 and 53%, I think, proficiency in English and reading and English and math. And that's the best public high school, not excluding charters. And I stood in front of the school board and said, when's the last time you were happy when your kid brought home a 50? Right? When's the last time
Very good point.
When you're if you're at Bancroft, when's the last time you were happy your kid brought home a 5?
6% proficiency, 6.5%. So this is the thing, and I'm going to say it, and I know I'm going to get some comments. So buckle up, Wilmington.
You're prepared.
Right. Mr. Pritchett was not only my principal, he was my friend. We worshiped together in the same church. He knew my parents for 30, 40 years. Great person. I believe the school should be named after him. But why are we spending money on schools that are giving me 5% proficiency in education? I can't justify the construction mentally in my mind. I can't do that.
There were 5 referenda last year. Okay, couple passed, couple failed. But there were 5 school districts that tried to get a referendum passed. Not $1 of any of that was for classroom learning. It was for buildings and land and other structures, and it wasn't for learning. And so I think that's why they failed, the ones that failed, because they're like, wait a minute, I want more return on my dollar. I need give you more.
I need that.
The kids need it.
The kids need that. I mean, we can't continue this, and I'm always, in my mind, drawing this to business. I'm looking at, now we got a 15, Judge, in my mind, just basic math, we have a 15-year gap now, right, of kids that aren't going to be educated, right, before we can actually fix the system and start pumping out better. And they're going into the workforce.
And the current plan is that we're going to fix it by 2028. We can't wait.
We can't
or 29
wait.
or 30 or whenever. We've been trying to fix it for 30 years.
I saw the numbers on the vocational schools, all but Sussex Tech.
Yeah.
The other ones really aren't doing that well. And that scared me even more because these are the students, for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part, are developing proficiency in their trade, and then they're going out into the workforce, like a couple days after they graduate, right? Boom, boom.
Right.
I can't feel comfortable that my HVAC system, that my water treatment plant, that all these great things that these kids are learning about is going to be, that they're going to be proficient in that task when they're not proficient on the basic skills of English and math, and they're within the 9 to 13 percentile. How do I feel as an employer in regards to feeling comfortable that these are the best employees for me?
Well, look at the LEAP program, right? They started a program to teach young adults enough reading and math to pass the apprenticeship exam. They actually started another program because they didn't learn it in school. So we're paying for it in school. Now we're paying for it, and they got government money to help teach this. But So the apprenticeship programs are actually really good programs. We need to change the ratio. We don't have enough people in the building trades right now.
Right. Oh, absolutely not.
And we need to change the ratio so we get more people into the apprenticeship programs. But the apprenticeship programs are a good program. My dad used to be in charge of it for the Sheet Metal Workers Union. And so it's a great idea, but we have kids coming out of high school who aren't able to complete the apprenticeship exam, which is basic, in order to get into the apprenticeship program and learn their specifics of the trade. Now, we don't have architects who haven't gone through college, so we're not going to have a building fall down, but math is critical.
Math is critical. Everything is math.
Yes, absolutely.
You're taking it from someone who doesn't want everything to be math, right? I run from it like the plague. But finding out to our young people that are watching and listening, and I know that they are, everything that you do, including this show, everything is math.
Yeah.
And we have to at least meet proficiency. And people think, oh, well, proficiency, they're good. Proficiency means you're just meeting the standard. You're not exceeding the standard. You're not showing off. You're just meeting the standard.
Our school system is designed so that people who can pass will pass. And people who can't pass aren't passing. And we aren't helping the people. I mean, if you can make it through the system on your own, you're making it through the system. And there's a lot of lowered expectations.
Oh, absolutely.
On who you are.
And you're accepted. They're accepting the lower expectations at the school level.
Yes.
It's okay. I can't imagine, I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox now. I can't imagine a teacher being okay with these numbers and having social media and all these platforms in which we have, and you're not saying anything about it.
Yeah. So you can't get lower than 50, and you need 50 to pass. So everybody's passing.
Yeah.
Right? It's wrong. It's just plain wrong. And we're giving the kids who graduate the illusion that they're competent.
Right.
When they are not. And that's a hard lesson when you think you're okay and you're not.
The day that you find out that you're not as good as you think you are is a very difficult
tough day. Very tough day. And once they're out of high school, there's no system in place to get them better, to get them back to where they need to be successful in life. It's a very, very, you talk about vicious cycles.
Right.
Our education system is failing everyone involved, the teachers and the students and the parents. And a lot of parents out there, you talk about everybody knows how bad they are. We know how bad they are. But a lot of parents think their kid's the one that's failing. They think their kid has a problem. It's not the kid that has the problem, it's the system that is problematic.
And that's why we're trying to push these numbers out. You've seen it. We're trying to do our best to educate everyone, especially during this election season time. Yep. Don't accept empty candidate promises. This is what the situation is. This is what the deal is. It's a very serious issue.
It is.
That can't be overlooked. And it can't be, you can't promise this in the time of election, regardless of what party you're in, and not have an action plan afterwards. I know everyone's, all the candidates that I've dealt with, all of their first 100 days have education at the forefront.
They do.
But how many of them have reasonable plans, some true objectives on what they're going to do?
Matt Meyer was a teacher, and he's a good person. I'm sure he wanted his kids to succeed. I'm sure he tried his best to help them succeed. But his plan is just more money, honestly. More money. We're going to pay professionals more. We're going to pay teachers more. We're going to put more money into this, that, and the other. And there's no focus on accountability. And I'm not saying accountability in a bad way. I'm talking like Mississippi. Get that kid to proficiency. That's your challenge. That's your objective. Let's hold you accountable to that objective. Hold the kid accountable, hold the parent accountable, hold the teachers accountable to getting that kid proficient. Because once you can read, you can teach yourself.
It's magic.
It is.
Yeah.
It is the most freeing experience and skill you will ever learn apart from walking. Mm-hmm. It is, absolutely. And we're failing kids. We have kids graduating high school can't read. And
don't let them not have a calculator in front of them or a phone, because we're in a world of trouble.
Yeah.
Judge Brady, thank you so much
Thank you.
For coming on to the show. As always, it's a pleasure. I hope to see you on election night, possibly. We can go over some of these results and kind of find out where your party stands in regards to education and a couple other things. Again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
On the agenda. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks. Judge Jane Brady, thank you so much for joining us here on the agenda. Today, we've tackled some of the most pressing issues surrounding education and the role of Republicans in the Delaware election. But let's take a moment to address matters that weigh heavily on all of our minds, and that is the ongoing conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. This struggle just isn't a headline. It's a complex saga woven through the fabric of history for over a century, marked by territorial disputes and cycles of violence that have deeply affected millions. Some frame this as a biblical struggle. We cannot ignore the fact that from the early 20th century to the establishment of the State of Israel, both communities have suffered immeasurably. Each has faced loss, displacement, and a relentless quest for peace. It's a tragedy that calls for our attention, our understanding, and our compassion. Now, as Israel takes bold actions that some interpret as efforts to finally resolve these long-standing issues, we must confront a critical question. Is this truly a path to lasting peace, or does it risk deepening the divisions and suffering that have plagued this region for far too long? Do we as Americans need to reconsider our role and aid in this conflict? It's a question that demands our reflection and our deliberation. We must ask ourselves, how can we best support peace and stability, and not just in Israel and in Palestine, but globally? Ladies and gentlemen, let's not forget that there remains a war in the Ukraine as well, which we are continuing to support as a country. This ongoing conflict raises significant questions about our foreign policy and our responsibilities as a nation. Where do your candidates stand regarding these critical issues? Do your views align? As we approach this election season, these questions are not merely academic. It's essential that we, as informed citizens, engage with these topics, challenge our own perspectives, and demand accountability from those who seek to lead us. This is not just food for thought, it's a call to action. Our voices matter, and they have the power to shape the narrative and the future. Let's ensure that our perspectives are heard loud and clear, for the stakes have never been higher. Thank you so much for watching the agenda, and we will see you next time right here.